Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, my special guest is Coach Jake Shannon, founder of No1 Coaching, Scientific Wrestling, and the Macebell Strength Training. Hello, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser. Thank you so much for joining me today. As I have been promising and as I have been delivering, I have some phenomenal guests that have been willing to join me and share their amazing journeys, their amazing knowledge with you. And one of those that I have absolutely been looking forward to is Jake Shannon, Coach Jake. He is the founder of the No1 Coaching, as well as Scientific Wrestling and the Macebell Strength Training Program. Jake, Coach Jake, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to hear about what you've got going on and some of these key terms that we just mentioned. How you doing, man?
I'm awesome, Kale. Really appreciate you having me on. It's been, like a month since I saw you actually in person or something, so right. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm super stoked to be on here and just spend some time with you.
Of course, yeah, and me as well, because I follow you on all your social media channels, and I kind of get a peek into what you've got going on in your world, and it's so fascinating because it is very different from me and my background and what Liz and I have going on, and it's fascinating. And I think I probably speak for a lot of people that I have never heard this term, scientific wrestling. Can you maybe start with that, because it's very curious, and then let us know, how did you get to be where you're at?
So, it's interesting. Today's actually my birthday, by the way.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, no, dude, this is awesome. You gave me a great birthday
29
present.
29 looks really good on you, I will say that.
Dude, I wish. Add 20 years. I'm actually 49 today. It's my last year in my 40s, which is dude, well, I hope not. But man, it's crazy. I don't feel that old. So... But, it's interesting because with regards to the scientific wrestling, my mom, I did the math today. I was actually writing a post about my birthday, and with regards to my one business, the scientific wrestling one, that I originally stepped on the mat and became a student of the craft of wrestling as a pee-wee wrestler. My mom put me in a little pee-wee program. Right. I was 4 years old. So even though I'm 49, I have 45 years as a student of this craft. 45 years, which blows my mind. My God. So, in my youth, I did a lot of wrestling, did a lot of grappling, did a lot of martial arts. I ended up, by the time I was 15, got my black belt in Taekwondo. I mean, it was strip mall karate dojo when I was 15. It doesn't it's just more of an accomplishment than I was really a badass or anything. I was like a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
But
still call the police. Yeah.
Well, so I had a couple challenges when I was right after I got my black belt. I also got cancer, and so I had pediatric cancer, and I Hodgkin's lymphoma. Ended up having to do chemo, radiation, all that. Deal with a lot of crazy stuff as a youth. And overcome that and get right back into it. Now, it messed up opportunities for me to do any kind of collegiate wrestling or anything like that. It basically nuked my whole high school years. But I ended up going, because I went to University of Colorado Boulder on a leadership scholarship, so maybe that's a little bit relevant.
What?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a pretty prestigious program at the University of Colorado Boulder called the President's Leadership Class. I think only 50 of the 10,000 or 15,000 incoming freshmen are chosen. So it's basis points of a percentage. And they paid for my college, and it was really great, right? But because I was going to CU, this is the real reason I went to CU, is my parents are blue collar. I was the first to go to college. My parents basically couldn't afford it, and this scholarship really subsidized a good deal of it. But because I was there, the very first two Ultimate Fighting Championships, the first two UFCs, were held in Colorado. And I was already this grappling nerd and wrestling nerd, and when I saw it, I was like, oh man, I gotta go. And I mean, it was pretty ghetto back when the first two, it's a nice multi-billion-dollar company now, but it was really rough. It did not look like it does today. It was really brutal. But it changed my life. It was one of those just oh my God, what is this crap? I have to get involved, like shut down everything else, and this is what I'm doing.
Right.
And so I spent, probably, I think I was 20 years old when that first UFC happened. It was 94. And I spent the rest of my adult life pursuing pretty much excellence. I did a lot of like the Tony Robbins trying to model the best you could type of thing, modeling thing. And I went right after the very best people I could to learn from. Fast forward a couple years later, the wear and tear of my body was pretty brutal. And I have a lot of injuries. I did not only grappling, but I even did pro wrestling, had some modest success, had a tryout with the WWE. I mean, I'm just being candid. I was jacked up on steroids in my late 20s, and I was like, I was 100% committed to making this happen. But, my body started really not cooperating, and especially a lot of the grappling and whatnot. I have a collapsed carotid artery, so I only have one carotid from getting strangled so many times.
Wow.
So I started to shift to coaching, right? And so I really started to shift in 2003 is when I started Scientific Wrestling. So that company is going to be 20 years old next year. And it's really about, the whole premise is really like, what if the rules of WWE, it was like the pin or submission, like the typical thing you see on like SmackDown or Raw or any of these AEW, the typical old school pro wrestling rules. What if that was contested like the UFC? And it's not an act. It's not a farm to create movie stars like John Cena and The Rock. What if it's, we take this rule set? And so that I've done that for 20 years as a coach and built the business up, really built a pretty good brand in the like martial arts space. So in that process, you mentioned the Macebell. Now, I've always been very entrepreneurial, and so I had seen the popularity of these kettlebells. Everybody knows what a kettlebell is. It's like that bowling ball with the looped handle on it, and you use it to work out, right?
The devil's invention, I think, is what most people yeah.
So because of all my study, like really in-depth study of wrestling, and I'm like really a nerd. I'm really like an obsessive type of person when I'm into something.
Right, yeah.
So I ended up finding that there was this tool that was similar, but used specifically by Hindu from India, Indian wrestlers, right? Dot, not feather, like. But it looked,
right.
It looked like a
from the country of
India, right? And it looks like a kettlebell, but instead of that looped handle, it has a long broom handle on it.
Interesting.
So it's radically different, and it's used differently. But nobody was doing it. It wasn't popular. So I basically made a production mace called the Macebell in 2006, built out this whole nomenclature, all this kind of stuff, and now it's like everywhere. Like you walk in, I walked into a 24-hour fitness, and I saw one. I'm like, dude, I invented that. And they're like, yeah, you invented that. I'm like, no, I really invented that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, those are two things that I'm probably best known for. But like I said, I've got this real crazy entrepreneurial bend. And that's where the No1 Coaching comes in, because I actually have my master's degree in financial engineering, which is basically financial mathematics and derivatives. I used to work in investment banking and mortgage banking and things of that nature, but I didn't like the corporate thing, and I'm a big fan of entrepreneurship. So the wrestling and the mace, those are my passion projects, but I also help companies product development and business development, basically, and that's the No1 Coaching.
Yeah. Wow.
So sorry for the fire hose, but that's the deal.
No, it's great. You are what a good friend of mine and a former guest that calls a multi-potentialite. You are somebody that, you've always, it appears, if I'm reading you correctly, you kind of have to have things going on, and you've talked about from going finance and wrestling and fitness equipment and coaching and all these different things, and really also business in general. And that entrepreneurial mindset is phenomenal. It's always fun to talk to people like you that are those multi-potentialites and just kind of get an inner working of how your brains work, because it's not the the quote unquote normal of our society. And I think it's so refreshing and fascinating to hear your perspective on things and just your little journey, because that was like 2 minutes, 3 minutes of you walking through 20 years of your journey, well, more than that, since you were 15, right? Or longer. And it's so fascinating. So first of all, I want to say congratulations on the scholarship. I've never heard of anyone getting a leadership scholarship before, so that's pretty legit to do that. And then to also, here you walk in to that first UFC and you have that moment, right? That like, this is what I want to do with my life kind of moment. Even though it sounds like you also went through and went, the financial sector and kind of had these dual paths, if I'm reading that correctly?
Yeah. So, because I am older, I have this interesting perspective of like before the internet. Like, as
what? What?
Right, and that has changed so much, like how we do business. And so, I graduated as an undergraduate in 95. Now, I had a roommate that was a mathematician, so like I was already on Usenet, but like Netscape wasn't even a thing. Like it wasn't even like there was nothing to get online. And so I came from a very blue collar background. I had no connections in wrestling or grappling, none. Like, like The Rock, for example, and I know that's like not real wrestling, but like just to use an example, his father and his grandfather were already in the business, so he had all that like institutional, generational knowledge, which has allowed him to skyrocket. I didn't have that. The internet is a tremendous tool for networking. I didn't have that then. So, I was like, dude, okay, I am sick of being poor in my 20s. Because I moved to San Francisco to pursue my study of grappling, but I didn't have really a skill set. I didn't have a network, and I was poor, dude. It was like, I had a couple of real come to Jesus moments. I remember I was sitting in the stock room. I was like a book clerk, basically at a used bookstore, and I had a half hour for lunch. And dude, I was poor. Like I was working 4 minimum wage jobs. And one of these jobs, I went back, and my one splurge that I gave myself was a $2 lunch special at the really ghetto Chinese food place across the street for lunch. And I remember this one day, it changed my life, honestly. I went and got my lunch special, ran back because he got a half hour for lunch. I'm in the workroom, wolfing it down. I get halfway through the box before I even look at the food. And I look in the box, and it is full of like cockroach carcasses.
Oh no! What?
Dude. Okay? Like
$2 lunch special, baby.
Dude, right. You get what you pay for. And so
it's full of protein.
Dude, like I get the practicality, but like I'm not that sophisticated to not be grossed out by it. And I just, dude, this is those moments where you're just disgusted with yourself, and sadly that's where a lot of change comes from, like rock bottom or whatever. Right. I just was like, oh my God, dude, like, where am I? Like, why? I deserve better than this. And what really grossed me out, then changed my life, is I was so poor and so hungry, and I actually picked out what I could find, and I ate the rest. And I just, like, for the next 2 to 3 days, I was so grossed out with myself. I'm like, what am I doing that I have to live this life? And that was when, now I worked in these bookstores, and one of the bookstores I worked at, when I first went to college, I started out as like, these coffee shop intellectuals that argue like for Marxism and all these dummies, right? Like when you first start, you don't know. And when I got to college, I got into these debates with these people, especially in the leadership program. And honestly, I got converted over by, this guy. I just couldn't beat him in arguments. And I was like, oh man, I'm not winning until I realized it wasn't him. It was the arguments he was making were right. And he turned me on to a whole litany of literature that I'd never been exposed to. Basically like libertarianism, like Ayn Rand, economics. And so I kind of got obsessed with it. I was like, oh, this is fascinating. The bookstore, one of the bookstores I was working at the time, but again, this is before Amazon. This is before the internet. It was a direct mail bookstore, and their niche was libertarian books. And it was largely economics. So Milton Friedman, F.A. Hayek, these economic stalwarts of kind of the classical liberal or the libertarian idea, which is very pro-business and pro-capitalism. And so I remember I was in the book stacks one day, and I'm just a nerd, so I'm reading them all, and we had one of the authors come in, and I'm like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. I'm like a fanboy, And I talked to him, and he's like, dude, you don't have a degree in economics? You don't like? And I'm like, no, I just like this stuff. And he's like, dude, you need to go into grad school. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. I don't know anything about this world. And so he's like, let me help you. Come to find out, he was the dean of the graduate school where I ended up going to grad school. I started out in the applied economics program, and the funny thing is, I found I had such a talent for it. I was like, dude, this isn't hard enough. And I was like, what's the hardest program? And they had this program called financial engineering, which is all mathematics and derivative pricing, like options, forwards, swaps, and risk management, and some computer programming. So I was like, all right, well, this seems super hard. Let me try that. And it was super hard. It was really challenging for me. But I graduated in 2002, and as a result of that, I did end up getting some pretty, in terms of having a job, which I later found out I hated. I'm not suited to having a boss. But, I ended up getting some good, I was like, 2002 I graduated, so I was 29. I was like in LA making $125,000 a year. It's way too much money for me at 29 to be making. I was like Wolf of Wall Street, dumb shit that I was doing with that money. I blowing it on dumb stuff. But it really worked for me. But then I was like, my real passion, my real purpose is this wrestling thing. So now I got over having all this money and being new money and blowing it. Now I'm going to invest everything into these businesses so I can have passive income and I don't have to have a boss. And a lot of it clicked for me, right? And, you mentioned that leadership program. That was instrumental because I was clueless. My parents, very blue collar. They worked jobs, they're good people, but they didn't know this stuff. And it wasn't like the internet was around. And it was, so when I was exposed to these people in leadership training, it really helped me figure out how to make my dreams happen, because it's going to require more than just me. I have to actually be a leader and inspire people to help me do this, or figure out incentives, or figure out a way to make enough money to give people money to help me, right? So it was instrumental. But yeah, it's all works together. And I can't remember the word you said, multi-something or poly...
Multi-potential.
Yes, okay. So to me, the old term that I used to hear all the time was polymath, which is somebody who has expertise in multiple fields. I don't think that's because of anything that that I have genetically, say. I think it has to do with a couple of things that happened to me early on. I think, being a wrestler, it's truly the hardest sport. I mean, seriously, I don't even think it's really up for debate. It is a brutal sport that gives very little glory. I'm not talking pro wrestling. I'm talking amateur, collegiate. It's brutal. And so you develop a lot of tenacity, you learn to get over stuff, and you just keep going. That coupled with a couple near-death experiences in my childhood, like the cancer and stuff, I just kind of had, and I'm sorry if I'm going to cuss and turn people off, but I don't know a better way to say it. I just had a couple big fuck it moments where it was like, I'm just going to go. I'm going to do this because I could die tomorrow. And so that tenacity and that just kind of risk-taking had served me really well, and then honing it in with some really good mentors like the guy that got me into grad school, the leadership program, kind of brought me into this space. And so again, my personal project really is all about this mission I'm on to get every man, woman, and child on earth involved in improving themselves through this sport of scientific wrestling as either a fan, athlete, coach, or a promoter, or all five, or four, whatever. That mission. But, I've picked up these ancillary skills in business and in coaching, and I think, the thing that you're saying about these polymaths, and again, I'm too stupid to remember the words you said, but it's this ability to keep all the plates spinning, and it's hard. And I think part of that is, the one part that maybe is genetic is I'm just like a type A, super energetic, I have to be doing stuff. I think they call that, if you want to call that what I call a feature. If you want to be a victim and call it a bug, I think it's called ADHD. But, dude, it's a good fucking thing. I kill it with this. And the challenge has been integrating all the interests together so that there's efficiencies and not just, me trying to do everything. That's been the challenge, but I do feel my 40s I've really integrated a lot of that, which has been a relief.
That's really neat to hear. And I wanted to touch on, because you've mentioned it, I think twice, maybe 3 times, about mentors that you've had. You started with the gentleman you were debating and that you could never beat.
Yeah.
Like you said, he became a mentor of yours. You're the dean of admissions of your grad school with being a mentor, and then moving throughout. How important has that been to your growth? And then also because you're transitioning, just more officially, I guess, with your coaching, with the No1 Coaching, into that role as a mentor to other people. How has one prepared you for the other, and what are the takeaways that you're doing leading forward to be that to the people you work with?
So, when we were setting this up, you said, what do you really want to talk about? And I said, I want to talk about coaching. And this is my answer. This is my way of answering your question. So, a mentor or a coach, in a lot of ways, they're very, very similar. I think a coach is more involved in your success than a mentor, but not necessarily, okay, because it's, there's a lot of gray in the definitions there. But for me, so you mentioned, the roommate. Now that or the guy that I was debating, he was a college roommate. The guy's now literally a brain surgeon. He's at University of Wisconsin-Madison. I think he's a neurosurgeon. Brilliant guy, dude.
Well for himself.
Massively and changed my life. Another roommate of mine. This is just luck. I mean, honestly, but part of it is you meet all kinds of amazing people. What do you do with that? Do you recognize it? Do you humble yourself and say, I'm the dumbest guy in the room, let me learn? Or do you try to compete or brag that you're your friend and not do anything with it, right? I tried not to do that. I tried to humble myself and learn. And I've been the stupidest guy in the room a lot, on purpose. On purpose, right? So another one of my roommates now runs Thrasher Magazine. He's like the head of Thrasher Magazine. And I learned a lot from him. Even back then, when we were 20-year-olds, I never saw anybody so obsessed with the subject as this guy was with skateboarding. He literally, you could say, it was like Rain Man. I could be like, dude, September 1983, page 7. And he would tell me in Thrasher Magazine for that episode, that issue, what was on the page. It was like, whoa. Wow. So I was like, dude, I love that, but I'm not into skating, but I'm into this martial arts and grappling stuff. And I applied what he did to that. The mentors in the leadership program, the dean of the school, it's crucial. And in fact, I believe, honestly, and I think maybe this is because of the internet, the old systems of going to school, getting an MBA, all that shit, that used to work when there wasn't a better way. But I think the way that the networking is working because of the internetwork, I think the internet has made it so that we're actually going back to a model that works better. And that's almost like an apprenticeship model, like a coach, like a master and a student, like a coach and an athlete. And that's the thing that I really think that I love. In fact, this is a great book. It's called It's the Manager. I don't get a plug. It's put out by the guys from Gallup. They do all the stats and the polls. You have to remember I'm still a nerd and I like statistics. So they do all that, right? But what they said, the point that they're coming to is it says, and it's backwards, but hopefully you can read it or the dyslexics can read it, moving from boss to coach. And that, dude, resonates with me in such a big way. So, I have a couple business clients, have nothing to do with grappling, nothing to do with fitness. But these are companies, I have a couple multi-million-dollar companies that I'm helping them with. And the problem is that how do we get these people, nobody, Kale, when they're a little kid or when they're an adult says, hey, you know what? I want to be bossed. Nobody wants to be bossed. And nobody wants to be managed. Nobody wants to be managed. So, the key here is how do we get these people that are in these traditional roles as a manager or as a boss to shift into a coaching mindset? And to me, right, what a coach is ultimately interested in is results, right? A mentor that we both share is Grant Cardone. Right. And one of the things Grant loves to do is let me look up the definition, right? And he gets you some definition. Well, I'm going to, and Grant's a genius, dude. I'm a pimple on that guy. I sit at that guy's feet and just absorb as much as I can. But I am going to go a little further because my graduate degree is in financial math. My undergraduate's in English. And the one thing I really picked up, I think that was valuable to me in English, I've written multiple books, so that's one thing that's valuable. It's just I can write like a crazy man. But the other thing is this idea of etymology, which isn't just definitions, it's the history of the definition of a word. And if you take a look at the word coach, the original meaning of the word coach is like the Wells Fargo logo, a stagecoach.
Right.
Something to get you from point A to point B. And it only started to transition as a metaphor to like what we do now. The first transition was as a tutor. Now, what's the difference between a tutor and a teacher? If you look at the etymology of the word teacher, to teach comes from this some word in German or something. It means to point out, to show. Right? So traditionally a teacher gives you the information and then gives you a test. The tutor makes sure you freaking pass. The tutor is the one that makes sure that you get the results.
You understand, yeah.
So to me, that is the importance of bringing coaching. Everybody's a freaking coach. You can get somebody, oh yeah, I'll teach you how to wipe your butt from front to back coach. Like there's a coach for everything now, which is great. I actually support that because I think that this shift has to happen with the way that information is transferred. And it is exactly to what you're saying. Like the importance of a mentor. The coaches and mentors in my life have changed my life more so than any education, any schooling, anything else.
Right. Yeah, and I would wholeheartedly agree. I'm the same way. I can look back at the major shifts in my life, whether it be direction or attitudes, mindset, have all been because of a mentor. It's never been me just sitting around by myself thinking and going, this self-awareness like lightning. Like, no, it's by the influence of other people that, hopefully you are doing things that are actively putting you in front of them and exposing you to those types of things. So yeah, that is phenomenal. Now you have a very, again, by the history that you've shared with us, a very entrepreneurial type of a spirit, right? To go along with the multi-potentialite mindset. How is that something you like? Where did that come from? Is that something that your parents instilled in you? That was just part of it because you mentioned being kind of blue collar. Like where does that come from, or is that kind of just self-generated? Of I don't know. That's the way I am, boss. So yeah, I definitely didn't learn it early on. My dad was in the same job for over 40 years, like retired with a pension, like that. My mom, right. Same thing, retired, was in 25 years, neither one never ran a business. Hardly anybody in my family ever ran a business. Nobody went to college. So, honestly, I don't know if I've never really even really thought about that. I would have to guess that, as a child, I was an only child. Now, my parents married and divorced multiple times, and so I had step siblings and stuff. But I spent a lot of time alone, because both my parents were working their asses off, trading their hours for money, and I was left alone. So latchkey kid is definitely a big thing that could go on my resume, right? But I think what that did was when I was alone, I figured, I was alone like a lot, and they were good. It wasn't like neglect. I had what I needed, but there was nobody there, and I was bored. And so I had to figure out how to do things. And if I wanted something, so I was always really creative. And any time I got a job, it seemed like the job stifled my creativity in terms of problem solving. And so I just was like, dude, I can't do this, man. I am mad. I don't like this job. I don't like what I'm doing. I thought I would. I like the money, but I'm not happy. So, I started, again, I just saw a couple people, actually, okay, you know what it was? I was listening to a Dr. Dre song. Now I'm thinking about it. I was listening to a Dr. Dre song on the 2001 album, and there's some song, and I cannot remember. I have it on one of my playlists, but he says something. It's a diss track, and he's ragging on somebody, and he's like, you know what? Move units, and then we'll talk. And I was like, move units, and then I started thinking, because I was in grad school for financial math, and I'm like, move units. Oh, if I sell
100 units of something at $10,000, that's $1 million.
Yeah.
Shit. Now I just got to figure this out. And that from there I started like applying how can I make as much money as possible with things that I like.
Yeah. That's really neat. Yeah, and that's funny too, just those moments. Again, you can almost say Dr. Dre is a little bit of a mentor, right? And just that mindset of...
Had I not heard that song and my mind be in that mindset at that moment, who knows, dude? I'd probably still be working at a bank in the analytics department or something.
Yeah, easily, doing the, 125, 150.
Stuck
with your,
there.
3% raises or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Dre, for giving us the current iteration.
And he's a great entrepreneur. I mean, honestly, and that.
Oh yeah.
So it's funny, like, this is one thing that I actually really like about Graham, is he's always playing all this gangster rap and all this stuff. And to me, it's like the only musical genre that is really talking about personal development and wealth. Like rock and roll, it's all mopey, feel bad for me, or anger, but like rap music, a lot of it's like, let me get some money, I'm a boss, like all this stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll listen to that. It's killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah, I love it. Now, I do want to ask you, because I ask all my guests this, about, based on whether it's a previous experience you have or something that you take into your coaching program, what is your interpretation or your definition of the difference between a manager and a leader? No wrong answer, just kind of your feelings on that.
So, I really love that season 2 of Undercover Billionaire that Grant was on. Not just for Grant, though. I really, to me, the Elaine, and I cannot remember her last name, so I apologize for that, but, the way she was able to rally so many skilled people around one cause and not pay them a single dime was, so inspiring. From a leadership perspective, I'm like, that really to me is a leader, is somebody who really knows the mission and they're able to inspire people with their own oomph. It's like a bootstrap type of thing almost. Like there's a spark that they're able to be like a flame and light everybody else's candle. You know what I mean? And that to me, it's hard because sometimes it's a little ineffable. But I think a lot of it has to do with getting on a mission. That clarity and kind of the obsession that Grant talks about. That I think this is like what I found with the guy who now runs Thrasher Magazine, my friend Michael. He had such crazy passion that it was contagious in a way.
And he had no choice but to just get involved and be in proximity.
I mean, if I were to boil it down, I think a leader has a contagious passion over a sustained period of time and is able to rally people behind a cause.
Yeah. I like that. A sustained, contagious passion. Yeah.
Over time, right? Because we all get excited after we come out of a Rocky movie or the Avengers, but then,
right.
then we get distracted with something else. So time, extended periods of time, I think is important as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. And I think the key part being too is the mission focus, right? It's not the granular details so much as hey, we're going up that hill, and then it's not important the tools we're using to get up there, but we're getting to that top of that hill. Yeah, I like that a lot. This has been fascinating. Legitimately, this is so. Like I said, it's fascinating for me to hear, your kind of take on things and how you see the world, because it's slightly different, certainly from me, and I think different from a lot of quote unquote normal of society, as evidenced by a lot of the things you do and a lot of the projects you've got going on. How do people, if they want to learn more about whether it be scientific wrestling or No1 Coaching or Coach Jake Shannon in general, how do people get into your world? What's a good way or the best way?
Well, I appreciate that. So if anybody's interested, just to hit me up, probably the easiest thing is Instagram. My Instagram, I tried to make it easy. It's just Ask Coach Jake. So just, the little ad sign, Ask Coach Jake. That's probably the easiest. But, Scientific Wrestling has its own site, scientificwrestling.com. That's got a lot of that work. And then No1 Coaching, which is like this, No1 Coaching, right? I tried to be clever that it's like going from no one to number one. Like that's my little clever little brand thing.
It.
But No1 Coaching is like if you're more interested in the business development and that kind of stuff and the Grant Cardone stuff that we both do, that's probably a good place.
All right, yeah, I love it. And all those links will be in the description on whichever platform you're listening or watching on this. So make sure minimum start following Coach Jake so you can see, like I've been witness to the last several months of just all the absolute awesome, amazing things he's got going on. You'll be hard pressed to find somebody that's more passionate and more genuine in their wanting to help people succeed in their business. So I applaud you on that. Congratulations on your success with that.
Thank you.
So as we're getting ready to wrap up here, again, thank you so much for being willing to donate your time with me today and lend your insights and your expertise to my audience. Do you have any big projects coming up, any events happening that you want to make sure to get out and share to the widest spectrum possible?
Yeah, so I've got like basically three things, and I'll make it quick. So the No1 Coaching, really, I am on a mission to move managers to coaches. So that is really where my value add is. I've been working with a lot of I've been very fortunate. I have a nice Rolodex, but I'm always I want to help to get these people to where changing managers into really powerful coaches, right? Because my goal is to blow up revenues, destroy employee disengagement, and really get people in the company aligned with the actual mission of the company. And I think the way to do that is changing managers into coaches. So I would love to talk to anybody about that. I try to be able to transfer the infectious passion that I have, the contagious passion I have, into these managers so they understand and really align their personal values with that of the success of the company. That's one. And then two, with the scientific wrestling, I am trying to help fight gyms. So in the way that, say, a CrossFit has an affiliate program and anybody can join in, I have that with scientific wrestling, and my mission is to get 100 affiliates involved. It's really almost on the verge of being a franchise insofar as it's like a business in a box. I give you 6 months of 10x certified business coaching with it. I give you lead gen. I got one of the biggest lead gen companies that'll do this for you. So it literally is like a no-brainer if somebody owns some sort of fight gym or martial arts studio. I will help make you a lot of money. So those are probably the two biggest projects. And the last one is I have this promotion, which is competitive grappling under professional wrestling rules, which is absolutely nuts. We did a competitive tag team tournament. It was wild, dude. Literally, when one guy tags the other, there's 10 seconds of interference time where it's 2-on-1. It's crazy.
Right.
It's wild. I actually have to have 2 refs to watch all the crazy action because it's so crazy. But that's called Shoot Pro Wrestling, like shooting a gun, SHOOT, Shoot Pro Wrestling, and that has a website, shootprowrestling.com.
All right, yeah. Shootprowrestling.com, scientificwrestling.com, and then
No1 Coaching.
Coaching.com. Yeah. So yes, again, all those links will be in the description. Make sure you check those out. And man, you open that now I want to dive into your scientific wrestling program and stuff, because I think that the opportunity for that is huge, especially coming out of the insanity of the last couple of years, and people are starting to realize that, oh, maybe I do need to take care of my body, and maybe I do need to have things to get out of the house and get involved in our communities and stuff. So I think the opportunity, I think you're hitting right at a really good time for that. So
it's hard for gym owners too, because I personally think all politics is trash. I don't like it. I think it's a waste of time. But the problem is everything's become so politicized. And I'm gonna be real. All this lockdown BS traumatized, destroyed the gym business. And really, the affiliate program that we're talking about, the scientificwrestler.com affiliate fight gym program, was my attempt to solve that problem. How do we make sure these people make as much money as possible? And even if lockdowns happen, how can they keep generating revenue? So, yeah, it's a whole thing, man. That gym sector is super important for people's health.
Yeah, big time. Yeah. lots that could be said on that. Maybe we'll discuss that more in depth on the next interview episode that we have together. And I hope you do come back.
Dude, I want to have you on mine, man, because I'm talking all about my crap. I know that you got like some crazy great stuff going on. So.
Well, thank you very much. I would appreciate it, and I'd be honored to. Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we can talk leadership. I'd love to get your take.
Cool. Yeah. I've got a thing or two an opinion or two, I guess, about it. Although I didn't go to a scholarship, so I'm actually a little bit intimidated now to talk to somebody.
I was 20, dude. Like, what's a 20-year-old now? But it set me on a good path. It's a good subject, and I'm glad that you've taken it up.
Yeah, I enjoy it. Yeah, it's fun. But kind of a lot of the same thing, so many hard lessons learned from my military days and things, a lot of things.
Speaking about a mission, right? Like the importance of a mission, I think people brush this over, and you have a professor who never made more than $65,000 a year saying mission, vision, values, next page. But they don't, it's actually super duper important.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, and to be able to, the thing that was always so surprising, especially as I gained rank and got older in the military, is while the military does very well at mission and getting tasks done, they don't do so hot on how do I have my people, whether I'm in command of them or just informally, how do I get them bought into that mission beyond just you're gonna do this because you're on order.
Yeah, it's all whip and no carrot with the Army in the military.
It's such a dynamic that as I said, as I got older and gained rank, my eyes were just more and more open to this and just some of the shortcomings and the successes of just the people that are in my world.
And thank you for your service too.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, man, I've loved it. Thank you so much, Jake, for donating your time and being willing to come on and express. I really appreciate it.
No, dude, this is like a birthday present, man. Not thanking you. This is like awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's right. And a big happy birthday to you.
Thanks.
Even though by the time we're listening to this and it's been posted, it'll be kind of a belated birthday, but live today, it'll be a big happy birthday.
Thank you.
Have a fantastic evening celebrating with your loved ones.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast and welcoming Coach Jake Shannon of No1 Coaching. Make sure you listen to this one again for sure, because we talked about a lot of different things, and you can glean so many different nuggets from what Jake has been talking about. So I look forward to welcoming him again soon. And no matter where you're at in the world, have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.